My name is Aaron Ladd, host of the Chiefs Squad Show. Kansas City squanders one last opportunity to crawl back into the playoff picture, but now they're forced to look in the mirror and address their flaws. We recap another close loss coming up on this episode of the Chiefs Squad Show.
I'm Darren Smith. I'm live in the tunnel. The players walk through. Same script, different game, same results. This offense is no better than the Cleveland Browns play calling. So this is what it is.
And I'm J.C. Pearson, just as frustrated as everybody else is. Again, a one-score loss. I think the Chiefs did it to themselves again, and we'll discuss all of that.
Chiefs Kingdom, stand up. It's the Chiefs Squad. Everything Kansas City Chiefs every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from Arrowhead Stadium, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Squad up. The Chiefs Squad Show starts now.
All right, we are in on another episode of the Chiefs Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com to place your NFL live bets all season long. It is another one-score loss for the Kansas City Chiefs. Excuse me, not a one-score loss. Texans tacked on a field goal at the end there. 20-10, the final, as Kansas City drops to 6-7. Let's just get the memes going now. 6-7 on 6-7 weekend. Darren Smith is there in the bowels of Arrowhead Stadium. You see the players walking by. If you're joining us on YouTube, J.C. Pearson looking a little sour in the face. Our guy Chris Clark is going to join us later in the show as we break down what is sure to be a back-breaking loss for Kansas City in this one. First, and most importantly, we appreciate our everydayers for tapping in with us with every episode, making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit the hype button. If you're watching on YouTube, do whatever you have to do to share some love. I know it's been a tough season, but we're going to keep the energy up, breaking down each and every game the remainder of the way for Kansas City. We'll give our instant reactions from this one. We'll play a little blame game. Who's to blame for this loss? And then we'll take a treetop view and just look at the season so far, 6-7, not where anyone expected this team to be leaving week 13. Is the dynasty done? We're going to have some hot takes on that one, as well as what we want to see the rest of the season. But let's just get to our instant takeaways. I want to get to Darren. I want to get to JC because Darren's going to go in there and talk to the Chiefs after this 20-10 loss. Darren, what led to this one in your opinion?
Well, first of all, Darren might just go straight to the field and then continue with his post-game in the locker room. But honestly, the defense came alive, from the second quarter on. And if we're being totally honest, the play calling and the offense let this defense down. And special teams, Harrison Butker misses another field goal that could have played, a big factor in whether or not the Chiefs won or lost this game tonight. And once again, here we are. Because of play calling, special team blunders, and more. And now the Chiefs are on the outside, really on the outside, hanging on by a thread. 11% chance of making the playoffs now. So that's where we're at.
All right, JC, what do you think? 20-10, we had a lot of discussions about the fourth down calls and some other things that were going on for KC in this one. What's your gut tell you about what led to this loss for KC?
Well, I think they were in it really until that fourth down call, and it was tied 10-10. We should have been up 13-10. Obviously Darren talked about the Butker miss, but at 10-10, I don't think you have to be so aggressive and so desperate deep in your own territory right there, because if you don't make it, which they didn't make it, the Texans are already in field goal range at the very least, and now they're on the short field. It's hard to stop a team in the short field. We talked last week about trying to make them play on the long field, play the field position game. They did that to us for the most part with Tommy Townsend. But, in that particular situation, going for it on 4th and 1, I just didn't agree with. And then the play call, obviously, if you're going to go for it, you got Kareem Hunt, who's been very successful in short yardage situations. I'd rather go down swinging with him if you're going to do it. But they didn't. They chose not to do it, gave up a short field, scored a touchdown. And then, from there, we're just fighting uphill again when I don't think we really had to at that point.
Chris Clark is in. He's joining us now. What'd you make of this 20-10 Chiefs loss in primetime?
their stars, or who are supposed to be their stars, let them down. 2 huge drops, Kelsey, and I'm not going to put it all on Kelsey's shoulders, but let's go back to the Philadelphia game. Kelsey also has an interception come off his hands that pretty much cost him the Philadelphia game. Did it again against the Texans. I'm not going to say that they necessarily win if he catches that ball, but they have a chance to go down and win. It's just kind of the dichotomy of the season. But Rashee Rice dropping the ball on 4th down when it hits him in the face. Kareem Hunt dropping another ball that would have given them a first down before they had to kick their field goal, which would have completely changed the perspective of, maybe going for it as opposed to having to kick the field goal there. A lot of miscues on Kelsey, a lot of miscues on Rice, just not enough plays from the playmakers. And the other part of this reality is, to me, this looks like Mahomes is probably hurt and has been for most of the season at times. I mean, not being able to throw the ball down the field, 40 yards, not having enough ability to throw the ball down the field 40 yards when he stepped into it. That's not Mahomes. So lots of things to look at and to go forward, and to lose your starting left tackle, your backup starting left tackle on the first play of the game, and go in with Issa Poole versus this defensive line. The fact that Mahomes was able to make it through the game was shocking to me.
Yeah, you hit on 2 good points there. The broadcast did a great job of showing Mahomes kind of trying to do the upkeep on the left knee there. He's got the warming pad or the massaging pad. Obviously, this is a game that required him to use a lot of his legs, 7 attempts, 59 yards. We talked about this in the preview. If he's the team's leading rusher, that's usually not a good sign. And that happens once again on this day. But it couldn't have started any worse for KC. And I sent this in our group chat. I mean, Wanye Morris goes down on the very first play, and it's already a patchwork O-line that you've got questions about what the play calling is going to look like, how they're going to be able to spread the ball around, and just what the offense is going to look like overall with so many holes along the ship on the O-line. I thought Issa Poole was one of the biggest bright spots in this game for KC. He comes in and holds his own. Danielle Hunter was pretty much a non-factor until late in the 4th quarter in this one for KC. The drops was very reminiscent of, KC of old. And this was kind of one of the things that, and I'll toss it back to you, JC, on this. I know we gave our predictions in our last episode, and I was just like, there's too many inconsistencies for KC. 1 week it's the penalties, 1 week it's the drops, 1 week it's the running game is not getting going. We haven't seen all the stars align consistently enough for me to think that they were going to win out and go the rest of the way. And tonight, the defense played well enough for the offense to get going, but they just could not find ways to get out of their own way. And here we are, 2010, wondering if the dynasty is cooked.
Yeah. And really, it's self-inflicted. We talked all week about, this is the number 1 defense in the league, and we got backup tackles. And not only do we have the backups, but we had the backup to the backup come in, and we're playing against, these 2 pass rushers, double digit sacks. And really, we played as ugly as it was. If everybody just made the plays that were there to be made, they beat this number 1 defense that's supposed to be so daunting. Noah Gray had 2 big drops. Also that, he should have caught. The Kareem one was more on Patrick than Kareem. He rushed it, but they just never were in sync. But they were scrambling and scrambled and got back in it. And then I think that desperation 4th and 1 in their own territory, and then the play call on that 4th and 1 that really took the wind out because they just couldn't get back. But as bad as everything was again, and I know we've been saying this time and time again this year, as bad as things were, they were in it and could have and should have probably won. But, that means nothing. It's a loss. And again, it's the same thing over and over, just self-inflicted wounds.
Darren, you hop in here. What are some of the questions you're going to be asking the players in the locker room here momentarily?
You really think I told you? I'm thinking about just going outside. It's kind of hard to ask the questions because when you go in there, and the question that I have in mind really comes down to play calling and play situations, and then when you do that, you kind of feel like you're throwing a coach or somebody underneath the bus. So it's kind of that's one of the reasons why I don't want to go in there, because my line of questioning might not be
You scared?
as
You scared? Yeah. That's what it sounded like to me.
it's not a matter of being scared. It's being professional, because the way I feel right now and the way they play is raising a lot of question marks. But I mean, I don't know. I figured out once I get in there and just figure out, because right now a lot of the players are kind of leaving right now. They're not trying to talk. Rasheed Rice just walked out. He's gone. So
No
a
shout.
lot
That was
of
actually
players.
a name. That was a name I was going to pinpoint. 8 targets for Rasheed Rice, only 4 catches, 34 yards. Had a couple key drops down the stretch. When he came back into this offense, it was all to talk about everybody's got to eat, and he was
Literally.
explosive in the yards after catch.
Hold on,
Why are we not seeing that?
Well, no, and I don't mean that, but like Hollywood Brown just left. He just walked past me. So I mean, a lot of these players, they either gonna go out the back door, or we're just not gonna see them at all. So
I don't like
so
that.
Are they not showering?
Well, obviously not.
Wow. I'm asking. I mean,
No, I'm serious. No, that some feel like they can shower when they get home.
Darren, this dude over here is so happy, man. This guy up here.
I will say this, to be clear,
or however many.
Pole played really well.
I got to go inside.
Pole played really well. I don't want to take anything away from him. I wasn't trying to throw shade at him earlier. I just didn't expect, when you go into that situation with a guy that hasn't even played in the NFL, to step into that role. That was something that, you don't expect him to perform like he performed. He played very well. I was very impressed. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch and see, what it is they have, because I didn't think that he was going to be a left tackle. I figured that if he was going to play, he'd be the right tackle. They didn't flip Jalen Moore. So you have to wonder, with the Wanya Morris injury, if he's probably going to be their starter in the next game, and maybe the rest of the season at this point.
And guys like him and other guys that are going to get an opportunity have to look at it as, this is your chance. This is your chance to show if you can play in the National Football League. And he did that tonight. And so, he's a guy that hasn't been here, hasn't been accustomed to, all the winning and everything. He's a kid that is hungry, still trying to make his way in the National Football League. And, there's something to be said about that, and I think they need to find some more kids like that are hungry and want to go out and perform regardless of the circumstances, right? If you're trying to be in the NFL, you got to play against everybody. So, big ups to him. Big boy. One thing, he's a big boy out there. And but props to him for going out there and holding his own with 1 week of practice, even though he was here in the preseason. But he just, they just brought him back. So good for him.
Enough on the positives.
Man, here we go.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
I just have to ask, you go into this game and you look at the inactive list. Jalen Royals is inactive. You knew Remigio was going to be inactive because of the injury. I get that. But Jalen Royals being inactive means they had 4 tight ends active in this game. I don't think they used them. I don't remember seeing 13 personnel out on the field in a game where you should be trying to run the ball more, and you should be trying to be a little more physical and make them cover 3 tight ends in the passing game even. And quite frankly, with the tight ends they have, I wouldn't have cared if I would have seen 14 personnel at once or twice.
Yeah. You have
tight ends that have the ability to catch the ball and act like wide receivers to an extent. But then you talk about what the bigger problem was with Noah Gray and Travis Kelce having huge drops in this game.
I have been pounding the table the last 3 weeks, going on a month, questioning how Kansas City finds their offensive identity. Are they a running team? Are they led by 15? Is 87? Who's going to be the third pass catcher? How do they consistently move the ball down the field? And it was on prime display in the first half. They still have not found that. Punt, interception, missed field goal are your possessions in the first 2 quarters. The missed field goal, hey, that looks like Bucker from earlier in the year. Offense did a good job of getting down there. Obviously, you love to get 6 or 7 when you're down there. But, hey, the missed field goal is an opportunity to get points. You still don't get points. It just is really there's going to be a lot of soul searching. I talked about on the intro, looking in the mirror and trying to figure out where do we go from here. KC has got to figure out a way to find out who they are on the offensive side. But it can't just be 15. And it's not going to be 87 going any further, because I'm kind of agreeing with the chat and some of the commenters here that, he's no longer factoring into your future plans. What is your offensive identity going into 2026? Does Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown factor a major portion of that? Who is your main running back? Like, we're going back to the drawing board almost offensively. And we could talk about this on the other side, because I know we're running into a break. But I'm curious what y'all think about just offensive identity for KC.
Yeah, to me, their offensive identity is going to be completely up in the air for next year. Like, Travis Kelce, I think, could be back in 26. It wouldn't shock me. But he can't be the guy that you expect to be, number one or your number two, you're either number one or number two wide receiver type. Like, you can't expect that from him. He's at best going to be probably your third option, or at least should be your third option. And to me, I think, Hollywood and Rice, I don't think Hollywood will be here, but I think Rice could probably get an extension in this offseason because he needs the money. And I think Kansas City will take advantage. I'm not saying that it's going to be a fantastic deal, but I still think there's potential there. I don't know what his deal is this season. It just doesn't look like he is as locked in as you would expect for a guy that is probably searching for a payday after year 3.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it comes, but when looking back on this team and this offense, what has been their identity? 15 and 87. To be honest,
when Tyreek was here, they spread the ball around a lot.
One year, and then then he was gone after that, and then what? It was 15 and 87 and make a play and it's not like there was a huge identity. It was like when you need a play, he's going to 87, and 87 was getting open, and that was the identity. They've never really had a true identity other than those two. When Tyreek was here, yeah, I'll give you that. But once Tyreek was gone, they're going to have to go and find that now, because obviously he's not going to be that guy anymore. And honestly, neither one of those guys is that guy anymore, as much as you hate to say it. But Pat's been missing a lot of throws, whether it's injury, whether it's whatever. And it's not just tonight. You can go back week by week, and whether he's trying to do too much or whatever the case may be, it hasn't worked. And so they're going to have to try to obviously figure some things out.
All right, let's hit our first break here on the Chiefs Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. 2010, another loss for Kansas City. They are 6-7. Playoffs looking far and far less likely. We will play the blame game on the other side of this break. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone who loves photos, endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, using promo code Locked On at checkout. That's AURA Frames.com, promo code Locked On. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions do apply. Back in on the Chiefs Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We got a full house. Aaron Ladd, J.C. Pearson, Darren Smith, and Chris Clark after a 20-10 loss for Kansas City against the Houston Texans in prime time. Very active chat. We appreciate your comments. We're going to try and get those up on the screen as we now play the blame game. And whether if y'all want to take this as this game, the full season, how we got here, wherever, the liberty is up to you. But everybody likes to throw blame in situations like this, and now there's no time to avoid it. I wonder where y'all go first. I'll open it up by saying Andy Reid is not blameless. This was a tough season, and I don't think they adjusted early enough to what the situation they were in. They kind of stubbornly put their head in the sand, even as much as this week when he said, we're going to try and tickle your tonsils with every play. I don't think a single tonsil was tickled tonight as the Texans certainly handled KC defensively. I go Andy Reid as having some blame, of course, in this season being lost. And there's going to have to be some coaching changes done, in my opinion, on KC if we're playing the blame game. Let's toss it to Darren first. We haven't heard from him in a while. Who you blaming as far as this game in this season?
This game, I'm blaming Patrick. This season, I mean, I would lean towards Andy, but a lot of it still boils down to Patrick at the end of the day because he's the leader. You expect Patrick to play at an MVP level. People consider him one of the top two or three quarterbacks of all time. They always say he's the best quarterback in the league. There have been many times this season that his play has not shown it. Obviously, showed it last week against Dallas, but tonight, again, one of the things that we've been talking about, I've talked about all season, that his deep passes are not connecting. He's been very inaccurate, and you stop and think all the times in the offseason when he's working with the wide receivers that shouldn't be an issue, but somehow, some way, it still rears its ugly head. So, for me, at least in tonight's game, Patrick, I'd say Patrick would show the most of the blame. And coming out of the locker room, I mean, you can see him dejected, sitting in his locker, towel over his head. Just, he, Chris Jones, and Andy Reid are going to talk to the media, but Patrick was very dejected in the locker room tonight.
JC, what you think? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we talk about the blame game and all that, but if Kelsey catches the ball, if Noah Gray catches the ball, if Rashee Rice catches the ball, I'm saying it's not all on Pat,
my brother.
Right, but those should have been caught. So it's hard for me to say it's on Pat because he made the plays that were there to be made. In those instances, they messed them up. They dropped the ball. I didn't say the one to Kareem because I felt that one was probably on Pat. The other ones were on those guys. The balls were catchable balls. If they catch those balls, we're not talking about this. So,
JC, and look, and to your point, JC, look, I'm only picking Pat. It seems like we just had to pick one person. So, but I'm with you because again, there was a lot of passes that should have been caught, but there were a lot of passes that he threw that was like it had you scratching your head. So, I mean, there's a lot of blame to go around for this game in particular. But so that's why I chose Patrick. But I get your point as well, of course, with the wide receivers.
Yeah. Right. Go ahead, Chris.
When I look at this, to me, this game, I think you have to put it mostly on the wide receivers and Travis Kelce. I do agree Pat didn't have some good throws. Completely agree with that. When you look at the season, though, I think that this goes more on Andy Reid than it goes on anybody else. And it's because he doesn't have the coaching staff that I think he needs to have. I think that you look at his running backs coach, his wide receiver coach, his line coach. I think the offense in general needs to have a rehaul on pretty much the entire coaching staff. And you have a QB coach even that isn't really a QB coach, that doesn't really have that experience. So to me, I think that you have all these guys that they're trying to fit into specific holes that don't fit there. I mean, you have a wide receiver in Todd Pinkston, who's your running back coach. Like, that doesn't make sense. Have them coach what they know. But also, I think you have to look at this offensive line, and to an extent, everything comes back to the offensive line over the past couple of seasons. It has just been bad, even when you feel like you have the right players to for the most part, it's just been bad. The scheme has been bad. They haven't really changed anything. And the thing that I go back to with Reid is one thing that I haven't seen this year is where's the innovation? It seems like every single season you have some sort of innovation that he comes out with every year. I don't remember anything that was really innovative this year on offense. And I understand you have all these different pieces. Xavier Worthy got hurt in the first game. Rashee Rice was out the first 6. I get all that. But where's it been since they came back? And I understand Worthy isn't 100% healthy, but it's still not been there. And I do think that if you look at what they're going to have going forward, you still have a pretty strong receiver core with Rice being in year 4. If you bring back Tyquan Thornton and you still have Worthy, that's still a pretty good core without even talking about Juju or Jalen Royals. So I do think they have something moving forward, but they need to get better in the coaching staff, in my opinion.
So essentially what you're saying, Chris, is that the real blame game should be on Brett Veach, because a lot of the talent and to your point, man, with the coaching stuff, they've been doing that for a minute. Because let's not forget when Eric Bieniemy was the OC, I think they had Greg Lewis, who was a wide receivers coach, as a running backs coach. Am I right, Aaron, up there? So
you mentioned your Eric Bieniemy. We got you on the bingo card. You haven't mentioned Vegas yet, but you did mention.
Well, no, because I was going to go there, but but to your point, see, the problem if we get down to the brass tacks is that Andy Reid is very stubborn. Because when it comes to the media, like we can make suggestions and put stuff out there, and he'll just bristle at it and go on about his business. But Chris, I mean, you make a good point about the coaching tree. It baffles me, and I put this out on X earlier. It baffles me that not once but twice Diana Rossini posted, made some news or whatever, talking about these offensive coordinators or coaches or someone that you need to be on the lookout for who might get a head coaching job. And not once but twice this season, I've seen Matt Nagy's name on there, and I'm still trying to figure out how is this even possible? Because according to Chiefs Kingdom and everyone else, Andy Reid is the one that calls the plays. But how is Matt Nagy somehow getting head coaching looks if he's not even calling the plays? And if he is calling the plays, we see what it is. He did not do a good job when he was a head coach there. He was coach of the year, but that was based off of that defense that he had in Chicago when they went 12-4. That was a defensive-led team, not an offensive-led team. He also drafted Justin Fields. We saw how that turned out. And with him being back as the OC, Patrick Mahomes has been far removed from any conversation as the most valuable player. So, now you can say, yeah, my Eric Bieniemy scorecard, but Eric Bieniemy coached up an MVP in Adrian Peterson in Minnesota. He coached up Patrick Mahomes to 2 MVPs as the OC here, and look what he's doing with the #1 rushing offense in Chicago. I'll leave that at that.
Let me hop in here quickly because I think this might be the silver lining in them being 6-7 and missing the playoffs this year. KC, Andy Reid, and to y'all's point, they've been in this run it back mode for the last 2-3 seasons, right? They don't like to make a lot of changes on the staff. The players have mostly been the same outside of the draft picks. They're not making these big swings in free agency. It's the core unit that has essentially lifted up this dynasty, which who can knock them? They've reached these high heights that nobody in Kansas City has been able to accomplish. This unit has obviously been successful. It's tempting to want to continue with what's gotten you to this point. But it's clear that not only the rest of the division, but the rest of the conference in the league has started to pick up on some of the innovation, and they're putting that into their offense and their defense and their schemes, and they've caught up to where these one-score games are flipping the other way. And y'all know NFL stands for not for long. You got to stay sharp. You got to have another set of eyes in there. I think this is very beneficial for KC to say, all right, we need to take a full look at how we do everything. And maybe there can be some changes from outside forces to kind of get us back to where we want to be.
Yeah, but Aaron, I'm sorry, Aaron, I was going to say, going back to what you're saying, though, it still kind of falls on Brett Veach, because when you talk about the core players and the draft stuff, all that is because you have certain players making so much money that all you can afford are your draft picks or whatever, because you're not going to get the top free agents coming in because they're not going to take a pay cut whether to win the Super Bowl or not. And so you end up with players like Juju, MVS, and others. Now, you've been able to win Super Bowls, but that's based on the overall talent. But trying to maintain it year in and year out, you just can't do that. Not with the salaries that they're making.
I would also argue that when you look at what they've been doing for the past 6 years, they've basically been playing, 19, 20 games most seasons? Like, you're playing into January, almost February every single year. That takes a toll. Not only does it take a toll on your team, it takes a toll on the coaching staff, but then it also gets you to a point where by the time you're out of the playoffs and you're out of contention, all of the guys that you could possibly want to probably hire to your coaching staff are gone. So good luck for getting new replacements if you really want to get replacements. So I do think in some way, I somewhat agree that not making the playoffs in a way could actually be beneficial for Kansas City, because they have the ability to maybe go reset. Maybe they can go out and do some things. It's going to be very curious, because the one thing that we haven't talked about is the defense and Steve Spagnuolo. Is he still going to be in Kansas City in 2026? Because there's rumors that he could be up for a head coaching job this year, which would be kind of surprising at his age and the way the NFL has been working for the most part.
Well, the NFL is a cycle, and they've had a great run. We can all acknowledge that. Nothing in the NFL lasts forever. And, especially with free agency and the salary cap. Sooner or later, it's going to catch up to you. And, we went on that great run. We got lucky with some cheap guys that we got in the draft that were great players that, we could spend money elsewhere. But then eventually you have to pay those guys. And, and at the time that they got paid, everybody was fine with them getting paid. Well, now, those guys are getting older. And now, the money is not there anymore to go out and get, these other young free agents that are difference makers. So you have to make do with with these other guys that are kind of fill-in guys, and it catches up to you. So now, what do? Do you get rid of a high price guy and try to allocate that money elsewhere in free agency? But you can't fault them for taking a shot because they had been winning for so long, and you want to ride it out, right? And it looks like we're at the end of that ride, but I don't fault them for doing any of that, because at the time that they paid that money out, it seemed like it was to the right people. They let some guys go, like Tyrann Mathieu, and they traded Tyreek for and got some high price draft picks for him, and everything worked out. When you're winning, everything cured. All those ills are cured, and now it's coming back on them a little bit, and it happens.
Let's take a quick break here. We'll come back. We'll continue our Brett Veach conversation, as well as discuss the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty. Is it done? We answer on the other side of this break. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. The Seat View feature is a game changer. You literally see what the pitch looks like from your exact seat before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. We are back in on an episode of the Chiefs Squad Show in the post game. 2010, the final, as Kansas City drops to 6-7. Aaron Ladd, JC, discussing whether the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty is done. And we were having a conversation about Brett Veach, and I want to just reiterate one thing before I toss it around the horn again. There's been some misses for Brett Veach in the draft here this last few years. I know there's been some finds, and he's found some diamonds in the rough. But, when your margin for error is so slim, and as y'all mentioned, you're paying these top dollar guys, and the area at the back end of the roster you really got to hit. I'm thinking about a Sky Moore. I'm thinking about a Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Like, I'm thinking about some guys where those are
Morris.
first-round picks where, you really want impact players, and it just hasn't worked out, and it really kind of shrinks the roster to where guys have to make impact plays. I don't want to say he's fully to blame. Obviously, everybody shares a blame. But as we're entering this next part of the dynasty for KC, you got to be more efficient in the draft, and you got to hit on some of those guys more.
Look, I know a lot of people love Josh Simmons, and deservedly so. But I've always been someone who believes that with Patrick Mahomes, you don't put a rookie out there to protect him. I don't care if you feel like he's a steal, you get it for the next 10 years. Until you can get someone, for me, you need to bring a big dollar left tackle in to protect Patrick Mahomes, who has a proven track record.
Jawan Taylor was the big dollar tackle, right?
No, right tackle. I'm talking about left tackle.
Oh, okay.
Jawan Taylor's always been a right tackle. And so, look, to an extent where if you were so unsure, you could have essentially kept Orlando Brown, but you didn't really want to pay him, which, okay, that's fine. But if you're not going to get a Larry Tunsil or some of these other big name left tackles, you're going to get what we've been seeing these last essentially 2.5, 3 years with the rotation of Donovan Smith and Wanye Morris and Kingsley Mutea and now Josh Simmons and now Jalen Moore. I didn't, that's 5 names I've given you for left tackle over the last 3 seasons. That's, there's no consistency. Obviously, you look at San Francisco for an example. Trent Williams. You've never heard of Jalen Moore because he was always backing up Trent Williams, and of course he's here backing up now and playing sporadically between left tackle and right tackle. So there's and the Chiefs, to Brett Veach's credit, I got what they were trying to do. You're paying your skilled players, the Tyreek and the Travis and the Chris Jones and some of these other players and the free that you brought in, and Frank Clark and Tyron Matthews and Justin Reed, paying them big dollars. So you have to hit on the draft picks, because what you're doing is you're essentially playing these players right when you draft them and mixing them in with the veterans, because you're trying to get maximum value out of them on their low dollar deals. And then some of them you allow to go to other teams to get that generational wealth, like a Juan Thornhill or Travarius Ward or something, because and even my guy L'Jarius Sneed, because you feel like you can't afford to pay them, so you let them go out elsewhere, and there's only certain draft picks that you want to pay for. And to be quite honest, you might have paid the wrong first round draft pick right now, George Karlaftis versus Trent McDuffie. And I don't even know if we talked about his injury tonight. So I mean, there's a lot. So I get what the Chiefs are doing, or why they've done what they've done over the last few years. But they've still been cheap when it comes to certain positions and certain players, and they've been able to escape by until right now, where the roosters come, where the chickens coming home to roost.
Well, when you're drafting 31, 32, 30, the bottom of the round, I mean, it's hard to get an impact guy now. Josh Simmons, getting him that late, and what he has done and what he appears to be that franchise left tackle. But and that's because he was coming off an injury. But you're not going to get when you're drafting that late every year in, year out, it's hard to get name some a team that hits on a late first round pick every year. Or just a first rounder every year.
Ravens. Anyway. Baltimore Ravens are pretty good at
every
that.
year. Who name
I'm saying it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, if your scouting department
higher, right?
Yeah. I mean, if your scouting department is worth what you're paying them, then you should be able to pick. There should be at least a steal for you every year. It may not be the first round, but you can find some players.
Yeah. And so now Kingsley is starting at left guard. He was their late round pick last year. They tried him at left tackle. It didn't work. He's starting at left guard. So is that a wasted pick? No, right? Because he's still starting for you. But, it's just a fine line. And again, guys have to produce. Bottom line, guys have to produce. Do they have enough talent? Do they have enough skill on this team? Yes, they do. Guys haven't played up to that level. You can't blame that on
players. Haven't been coached up. Players haven't been coached up to that level either. To your point, JC.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm a guy that puts it all on the field. The players, the coaches. I think they have been put in good enough positions, and just haven't played well. Too many penalties, too many drop passes, too many whatever. And that's not on the coaches. So bottom line, whatever it is, the guys on the field have to produce and perform, and we haven't been as consistent as they've been the last 5-6 years.
Execution. That's really what it comes down to. And you start looking at the skill players, Kelsey, Gray, Rashee Rice. You just have so many things that went wrong. And I don't really blame it on Taekwon. It was a fantastic breakup, but that deep ball, Mahomes put it where the ball needed to be. Like, that should have been a touchdown. And we can talk about him missing on deep balls all season long, but he put that ball where it needed to be. And Tyquan Thornton just had it knocked out of his hands. The safety made a great play. Got to be stronger at the catch point and go get that ball. But, it's execution in so many ways for this team in so many areas. And JC, to your point, you talk about Kingsley Suamataia. playing left guard. He didn't look great to start the season, but he has gotten better as the season has gone on. I'm not going to say he's not Joe Thuney, and he never was going to be Joe Thuney, especially this season, but he has been much better than I expected after his slow start, and he's gotten better, it seems like, in every single quarter. So I do think that is a pick that is going to work out for this team long term. The question is can you continue to get guys like a Josh Simmons to step in and play? The problem with Simmons is right now he's injured. He missed a month without an injury. I mean, you're sitting here in a situation where you feel pretty good about it because you thought you had Jalen Moore that could step in and play left tackle, which looked okay for the first couple of games that he stepped in for Josh Simmons, but not so much after that. You have all these different players in all these different positions. The guys you've paid to, for the most part, probably haven't worked out on defense. Chris Jones probably hasn't worked out for the $30 million that you're paying him. But how do you say that you don't pay Chris Jones with what he's done for this defense over the past 5 years? Like, I get the thought process. I get the payment. Karlaftis is another one that hasn't panned out. Sorry.
Because to your point, because at that time that they paid Chris, it was either Chris or L'Jarius Sneed, right? So you can't say that. No. Well, I'm agreeing with you because you can't say that was a bad decision because look at L'Jarius Sneed. He hasn't been good since he left, right?
He can't play.
Exactly. So you can't say that was a bad decision. So I mean, it's everything is a fine line, and then, I mean, I agree with you with that, Chris.
Hold on. I do want to say this. I'm not going to say that L'Jarius Sneed can't play because that to me, respectfully, that's an asinine statement. The problem is that the team he's on and the coaching that he has, it's horrible. I mean, because again, everything always boils down to the organization, coaching, and all that stuff. Because trust me, like I tell you all the time, if Patrick Mahomes would have been drafted by the Cleveland Browns, we'd have never heard of Patrick Mahomes. And they would not be successful. So bringing, trade, they were never going to pay L'Jarius Sneed. That's why they franchise tagged him with a transition tag so they can trade him. They were never going to pay him long term. So that was never an issue for Kansas City or Brett Veach because they were never going to give him a long term deal. But to say he can't play, that's not the case. Because had he still been here, I don't think these so-called injuries or him not being able to play would be what we're saying now. He can't play there because of the system, and that's a horrible team.
I completely disagree with you on that because
of course you're going to disagree with that.
yeah, because when you look back at the preseason, they didn't have him play in the preseason because he didn't have the ability with his knee. He didn't practice most of the season, and he would play in the games. Like, his knee is the reason that he can't play. I'm not saying he doesn't have the skill. I'm saying he can't stay healthy enough to play, and you can't win the game in the tub. And
that was the reason why Kansas City was never going to pay him long term. That's what I'm also saying. They were never going to pay him long term. They would look for somebody to trade him off with. It wasn't that he quote unquote cannot play. It was because he was going to be injury prone because of his leg.
Let's get back on track here on the Chief Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. The question for this segment was Dynasty done, and I'm just going to go ahead and say the Dynasty is not done. I said this a little bit earlier, and I think this could be something that could turn into a positive. You rest up, you recuperate, you look in the mirror, you see where your flaws are. KC is not far away. This is a team that has played a lot of one-score games. I think the division is something that they still can contend in on a year-in, year-out basis. Yes, they're not playing well this year. Yes, this is not the year they're going to win a Super Bowl. But going back to the Super Bowl 3 years in a row is something that a team had never done before. Rest up, recuperate, and go on.
Reinvent yourself.
Yeah, I agree. They still have enough pieces and enough talent to still be competitive with anybody right now. And so, you get a couple more pieces, you recuperate, you go back and you look at some things and, you reevaluate some things. And I think they're right back there next year. So I don't think this is the end of a dynasty. I just think that, this year was not a good year for them.
Well, the Dynasty just on pause, if anything. They still have, since they have an 11% chance to still make the playoffs, they're not even thinking, how we're thinking right now. They still feel like they got a chance to make the playoffs now. Realistically, I'm not going in that direction, but as long as they have hope, that's what they got to hold on to right now as a team and as teammates. Because again, walking in the locker room after I initially got off, I hadn't seen them that dejected since they lost to Cincinnati in the AFC Championship game. I mean, that's how bad it was in there, because they feel like, everything was working in their favor today, saying where they moved from 10 to number 8 and possibly 10 to 8, and they possibly could have switched, or 10 to 9, they could have switched spots with Houston had they won tonight. And the fact that they couldn't get it done, and Patrick, like I said, sitting in his locker, head in his lap, dejected with a towel over his head. He feels like he let the team down. And I mean, if we play in the blame game, I can understand why.
Let's take our last break here on the Chief Squad Show. When we come back, we'll talk our rest of season goals for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City offense. You're listening to the Chief Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Final segment here on the Chief Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. Aaron Ladd, J.C. Pearson, Darren Smith out in the elements, looking a little frigid out there. Darren and Chris Clark recapping this 20-10 loss for Kansas City. 6-7. I know there's an 11% chance. We can go ahead and mail that one in. Cancun is absolutely calling for Kansas City after this loss, in my opinion. But there's still things to play for the rest of the way. I think some people would say pride. Obviously, this is a team that has a lot of that, considering the streak and the dynasty and everything that they've been on. I do expect them to fully contend. I really didn't even see any mental. I know we kind of talked about in the lead up, maybe where their mental faculties would be at, if maybe they would check out going down. They were fully in it. The only time I felt like the body language was completely out of it was that last interception where Travis Kelce bobbles it off the hands and Houston gets it from there. I mean, there was pure dejection from him after that. Pat, you could kind of see some of the frustration after the Rashee Rice drop. But I think that once they start to get back into the week, they can try to contend. They'll hold on to whatever hope there is. I think rest of the way goals, I want to see special teams do something. At this point in time, we're talking about coaching changes. I think there could be a coaching change in the special teams department, because that unit has consistently been inconsistent week in and week out, whether it's the punt return unit, whether it's the kickoff returns going out of bounds, whether it's kicks being missed. We're playing for positions the rest of the way. If we're evaluating and looking in the mirror and seeing what needs to change going into 2026, these games are evaluation points at each week in time. And for me, it starts with the special teams unit. For the goal for me, the rest of the way, play clean on special teams and make a game-changing play in special teams is something that's been desperately missed so far this season.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that.
Can't deny that. I don't think they've had any big plays or any returns for touchdowns this season, have they? Yeah. So, I mean, I get what you're saying. Yeah. And that's the other thing, too. I mean,
another penalty tonight.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're up in the press box. It's like every time they seem to make a play, there was a flag on the play. And I don't even know how many flags there was. I guess I should look at the sheet they gave us. But, I mean, it seemed like there was a flag on every single down, every single play tonight. And so I think the Chiefs is interesting, because the Chiefs only had 5 penalties, or at least 5 that were accepted for 20 yards, and the Texans had 8 for 59. So it seemed to be a lot more. And I posted earlier that even when the Chiefs were down 10-0, it felt like they were down 21-0. It just felt like it was just a hard slog just to cut the lead from 10-7, and then tied up to 10-10, before they, gave up the last 10 points. So a lot does need to change, whether or not they, whether or not people's jobs on the line, I'll believe it when I see it, because Andy's not really someone who fires somebody. Like he was forced to fire Bob Sutton, after the AFC Championship game, with how bad that defense was, because it was like all season long, like, bro, y'all giving up 55 points a game, and you need to score 56 to try to win, and you wouldn't let them go then. It was only because, of course, it was 50 million people watching the game where, your defensive lineman jumps outside when a trip to the Super Bowl is on the line, that you decide, okay, it might be time to fire him. So I don't know. I don't trust that they'll make the right decisions, because, as you said, when it comes to special teams, I can't see a scenario where they'll let Dave Tobe go.
How funny is it, though, that one penalty probably actually launched Kansas City's success to the Super Bowl, because there's no way they have the run that they have with Bob Sutton as continuing as their defensive coordinator.
Bob Sutton probably would have retired at the end of that season, because you go to the Super Bowl, you play the Rams. Now, it's not going to be 13-3. It's probably going to be another 54-51 ball game. But, first of all, we'll never know, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'm a guy that do you forget how to coach in a season, or do you become a bad coach in a season? I mean, if you've taken this team to Super Bowls, you've won Super Bowls, you've been there, and now all of a sudden you're having a bad year. Now all of a sudden, is it on the coach, or is it maybe the players aren't executing? Because obviously how to coach, because you've won Super Bowls, right? They've got 3 rings and 2 AFC championship rings, So
it can be a mix, though, JC. I get what you're saying. I mean, it can be a mix because sometimes you've had so much success that, again, I go back to Andy being stubborn. Now that you've had all the success, nobody can tell you anything, because, like you said, you've gotten here, you've gone to the mountaintop, but but I always feel like you can still learn from your mistakes, because if you're not correcting your mistakes, or you're not trying to figure out ways to get better, again, you've got 7 losses on the season now. I mean, so obviously stuff that you've been doing isn't working, and so you got to look in the mirror and see what it is, and try to figure out how to change it.
Right, and I'm just was talking about special teams, first of all, and Dave Tobe, and he can't go and kick for Butker. Butker's had a bad year, had a bad stretch, then a good stretch, and then the one tonight, the return game. I mean, you can dial it up, you can call it up, you can draw it up however you want, but the guy's got to make the blocks, the guy's got to make the cuts, and guys got to stop holding and blocking in the back, that kind of stuff. That's on the guys on the field, and it's tough. I understand when teams aren't successful, you've got to make changes, and there's a price to be paid. But at the same time, it's hard for me to say that these coaches, this coach, that coach can't coach and needs to be fired when they've proven that they can win. And when they were winning, I mean, how many times, over the last few years has Dave Tobe's name come up as a possible head coach, right?
I don't think
being interviewed. No, it did. Yes, it did.
Oh, no. I'm saying you put out I'm saying I personally just hadn't, but it wasn't like I was out looking for his name to be put in the mix. So he could have been interviewed. I just
I'm saying, when you're winning, everything is great, and now you're this and you're that, and then when things go bad, now all of a sudden you suck. And I tend to put more of the blame on the guys on the field than the guys that are on the sideline.
Really, my question is, you have 2 scenarios going forward. You win this next game, you try to go 4-0 and see what you can do. 10-7, I still don't think gets them in the playoffs. I think they're probably out. But if you lose this next game, do you sit Xavier Worthy and have him have the surgery now? Because I'm guessing he probably still needs to have surgery on his shoulder. Get the process started, almost a month before the end of the season. Like, Josh Simmons shouldn't be coming back to play in the final game or the final 2 games at this point. So to me, it's a matter of what happens against the Chargers I think that you can try to push and try to get to 4-0 and maybe feel good like you ended the season right. But at the same time, if you do that, you're in a position where you're putting yourself down to what, the 22nd, 23rd pick in the first round, which I understand you don't want to play for draft picks, but at the same time, this Chiefs team has never really had high draft picks with Mahomes as a QB. So unless you're giving up a bunch to get up there, this gives you an opportunity to maybe be in a different position. And I'm not one to say that they should try to lose, but I think you get some young guys some playing time if you lose against the Chargers, and that's going to be the big key point for me.
My only pushback to that is that the Chiefs, there's no guarantee that you're going to find, that type of talent that we're talking about, even
That's
if
true.
you get to 2022 based off of how they kind of drafted. The other thing is, with Mahomes, that type of stuff doesn't even enter to their mind frame. They're not, they want to pick 31, 32. I mean, that's just how they're wired. You know what I mean? Because if they're picking that low, that means that they're in the AFC Championship game with the Super Bowl. I mean, that's something that will never creep into this particular iteration of the Kansas City Chiefs, because that's not how they're built and that's not how they're wired. Now, we might on the outside think that might be what it would take, but even then, that's something that they won't accept.
Oh no! That's why they are where they are, or where they've been the last 5-6 years, because they're competitors, and it's such a fine line this year between winning and losing, and they've lost. Obviously, whereas before the margin for error was bigger, and so they could still make some of those mistakes and still pull the games out, and oh man, that was so exciting, and oh man, you see, but this year the margin for error was just so slight, they couldn't do it.
There's a couple comments in the chat saying that we're not honoring Houston's win enough, and we haven't mentioned how well Houston played in this one. I don't think that Houston played extraordinarily well. I'm looking at the drive charts now.
They watched the third quarter.
There 6 of 7 drives from second, third, and fourth quarter. They punt and they get one score, a touchdown in that stretch. To me, this was way more about KC shooting themselves in the foot at every turn and having chances to be able to win the game and not being able to do so. And it reminded me kind of that Indianapolis Colts game. They kind of played out the same way. KC had opportunities to win that game and found ways to get into the end zone late and pulled away. This one, they just couldn't. Those drives turned into turnovers and the game was over. I don't know if Houston is extraordinarily better than KC tonight.
And I'll say this. Houston defense did what they were supposed to do. Patrick threw it up for grabs, and they take advantage of those interceptions and did what they were supposed to do. That's what But again, that's what good defensive teams do. They put you in situations, and Patrick, right, wrong, or indifferent or whatever, threw the ball up, threw it up for grabs at times, and they were able to make the plays. So I'll give Houston the credit that they deserve in that manner, because we gave the ball away to them.
Let's get our final thoughts in here. We got a couple minutes left. JC, what you think? Rest of season goals specific to tonight. Obviously, we got another episode Wednesday. Where's your headspace out on this Chiefs team?
Yeah. I mean, you keep fighting. That's all you can do, right? And like Darren said, that's their mentality in the locker room, and that's what it should be. And I like the fact that he said Mahomes was sitting down in his locker, dejected with the towel over his head, because that means he's hurting and he cares. I didn't like the fact that he said that a bunch of guys were getting out of there, racing out of the locker room, some not even showering. That's not good, right? I mean, do they even care? Or are they more about themselves? So I think you're going to see guys who are really invested and care, and those will probably be the guys that it'll be noticeable, and they'll be the guys that stick around, and you'll see the guys that are more about themselves and probably won't be around next season.
Unfortunately, JC, to that point, it's because they're receivers, the star receivers, that they may not go anywhere. I'll say this.
I didn't call any names, bro.
No. Well, I will. I mean, I called the names out as they were walking out. So I cannot take it back. I'll say this. As much grief as I've given about Chris Jones this season, and deservedly so, he played well tonight. However, you can tell to what JC was saying, the point of how some of these players take it personal with losing. Chris Jones hasn't had the greatest season this season, but I saw coming, as they were going to the locker room, just how hurt he was in the loss tonight, obviously based on his performance, but also the offense as well. But when you look at some of the veteran players, such as Chris Jones, Patrick, of course, he'll be here for a minute, even a Harrison Butker, but you look at Travis Kelce, they've been here for the ups and the downs. A lot of these younger players have only been in for the success, so they don't know how to deal with the adversity because they've never been through it on a professional level, because all they know is the team success, and those that are recent, all they know about the Super Bowl loss. But they didn't go through the 3-4 season when they lost to the Bengals in the NFC Championship game, when they had to run off on that streak to get to the playoffs. This is the first time that they've dealt with adversity with the Chiefs. And so we need to find out more about their character, these younger player characters, versus that of the older players, because we know what they're made of.
All right, that's a wrap on this episode of the Chief Squad Show. We are back in the midweek on Wednesday. We will be joined by Ryan Tracy, and we will break down Kansas City's next matchup. Chris Clark's head over to the Daily Show. They are going to be live for the next 30 minutes here on the Locked On Chiefs YouTube. Until then, we will see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us.